Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Dave, Season 1, Episode 7, What Would You Wear? Is not a new episode. This is the episode I'm on. Obviously, if you have not seen the show, the FX/Hulu show, Dave, starring Little Dicky, I wouldn't recommend listening to this, watching this episode, because I'm going to break it down. I'm going to talk about every aspect of this episode and break it down and talk about it. So if you haven't watched it, this is your warning. You will be spoiled. Not that it's necessarily a huge tragedy to be spoiled on any of these episodes, but it is a warning for those that may want to skip it. But if you are somebody who is a fan of the show Dave, or don't mind being spoiled, maybe this is how you want to consume the show. Just listen to me talk about it. And then actually, if you are a person that is listening to these episodes and have not watched Dave, I would love to hear your perspective, your thoughts. If you, after listening to me talk about, I'm going to go through 2 seasons, 3rd season's announced. If you go back and watch the show after listening to this show, the Dave, my recap show, I'd like to know what you think. That would be an interesting experiment. But in this episode, it's mostly Elz and Emma. We have very little of the other characters. There is no Mike in this episode. There is no Allie in this episode. There is barely any GaTa. There is very little Dave. Most of this episode is Emma and Elz, which when this episode starts, you have Elz on his phone in bed, waking, the person next to him waking up. We find out that it's Emma, hungover. They partied the night before and ended up hooking up and waking up in bed together. We're at Elz's place. Emma's hungover, like I said, reaching for her vape, tries to hit it, then realizes that Elz realizes she's trying to take a hit off of a USB thumb drive, which is very funny. I don't know if I've ever done that, but it is like, as far as shape-wise goes, the mouthpiece of a vape cartridge is very similar to the old USB, was it USB-A? I don't know. So funny scene. So they're waking up together in bed, hungover. Her shirt smells, her shirt stinks, so she's going to borrow a shirt from Elz. He tries to give her a shirt that is one of his well-known shirts, a shirt that people would recognize him in. She does not want to be recognized wearing a shirt, an Elz shirt. She doesn't want people to know that she is wearing one of his shirts, so she ends up going with a PE shirt. He walks her like a gentleman to her car. Kind of an awkward situation. I actually relate to Elz quite a bit in this episode, despite the fact that Elz isn't necessarily... It definitely... Especially breaking down this episode and digging into it as I do with each episode. He's a character that on the surface I relate to, but also I can see where all the faults are in everything that he does, where he's very selfish in a lot of ways. But he's walking her to the car. They have this awkward moment. She finds out that her car window is broken. Her laptop was stolen. All of her stuff in her car was stolen, which is she's a graphic designer. She needs her laptop. That is her life. And as somebody whose laptop died recently, I know how heartbreaking it is to potentially lose everything. Now, thankfully, which she mentions also, hopefully there's stuff saved in the cloud. So hopefully everything didn't get lost, but chances are there are going to be things that no longer exist in her world because her laptop was stolen. Then we find out that Elz, somebody stole one of his beats Dave sent him a text saying, "Hey, you recognize this at all?" And it's some SoundCloud rapper that stole Elz's beat. Didn't give him any credit, but he's not Elz so kind of wrapped up in himself and his dream to become a producer that he doesn't recognize the similarities between his current situation of somebody stealing his work and Emma's situation where somebody literally stole her work. So it's just one of the examples in this episode where Elz isn't, they're not synced up really. They're like kind of off. They're not on the same page necessarily. He's not seeing the relationship between the two of them. He's definitely more focused on himself. Very, in ways that I can relate to, maybe a little bit too much up his own ass when it comes to his drive, which is similar in a lot of ways to Dave, how Dave is very much focused, hyper-focused on his career and trying to get things working for himself, where it's very difficult to step outside of yourself to see other people's issues and to relate to other people, or at least try to. But he's telling her how he wants to be a producer, and she's telling him, it's like, why aren't you, she's trying to give him advice, she's trying to encourage him to follow his dreams, which he's still producing for Trippie Redd. But he's intimidated. He's just a regular guy. He's just starting out. He's not a name. He doesn't feel comfortable. He is not the same type of a person as, the guys who are super hustle without any experience. Like, there's kind of two sides to that coin, where it's like you have somebody who's creative and is focused on just being good and not really promoting themselves, not really good at self-promotion, out of hustling and pushing themselves. I am very similar, I would say, to that in a lot of ways. A lot more of my focus is to get good at the work and not promote myself because of intimidation, maybe, but also it's a weird thing that I relate to with Elz. Not why, and he's like intimidated. The dude's got a calculator face. He's got numbers on his face. He's got tattoos on his face. And he's a big time rapper. Of course, Emma calls the cops, but as they're sitting around, they're realizing how useless cops are. Like, the cops aren't really going to do anything. Cops don't really do much aside from murder people and human rights violations type of stuff. They don't really stop crime. They don't really recover stolen stuff very often. They're really not good at helping out the public in a lot of ways. And when your car gets broken into, aside from having a report filed, nothing's really going to happen. The fact that your laptop's going to get reclaimed in any way is just very unlikely. Very unlikely. So it gives them time as they wait for the cops, despite the fact that they realize that nothing's really going to happen. It gives them a chance to kind of bond a little bit, which you can tell that the Elz, they're not in the same place. They're not necessarily looking for the same thing. That Elz is a little bit more, I don't want to say clingy, but he is viewing their relationship in a little bit more of a romantic light, in a little bit different light, where she is looking at it as more of a casual thing. I've been in relationships like that. I've, due to my own personal traumas, due to my own personal issues, I have I'm not somebody who's, I've tried many times to have casual relationships, and I fail. I am not good at casual relationships. I prefer to be in a relationship. And I've been in situations where it's like what I want and what the other person wants doesn't line up, and it ends up not working. And we're not seeing everything in this. This is kind of just the beginning. We're just seeing their relationship a little bit. But Emma's not really into changing anything. She likes the dynamic that they have, casual, friends with benefits type of a thing. Elz clearly is pushing for more. Despite the fact that Elz lied about having a meeting to try and get her out, just to try and get her out of his house. Like, he's not doing himself any favors. If he wants to be in any kind of relationship with Emma, he starts off on the wrong foot by lying to her to get her out of the house earlier. So he's, again, the blame on Elz, in my opinion, that he wants his cake and eating it too. Kind of a thing. He wants to treat her in some ways like a casual relationship while also wanting to be in more of a relationship at the same time. Which I sadly relate to Elz a lot in this episode. So Emma ends up, she's like, screw it, I'm not waiting for the cops. I'm going to bounce. But she leaves her vape. And Elz tries to, run after her, showing she doesn't see it. The Many Faces is an ongoing abstract ink portrait series that I started many years ago. I release a new face every day, but go to inspireddisorder.com to check them out. So many available. But as a listener to The Ray Taylor Show, you can save 10% when you use coupon code INSPIRED when you check out. So go to inspireddisorder.com/TMF. That stands for The Many Faces. Go check them out, browse the entire collection, and when you decide on a piece, or maybe multiple pieces, make sure you use coupon code INSPIRED when you check out, and you'll save 10%. As a big thank you for checking out my work, for collecting my work, and for listening to The Ray Taylor Show. And with that said, let's get back to the show. Cut to Elz in the studio, at like the building or whatever where he works in this, he's in like the kitchen area getting himself a coffee. There's somebody else in there asking him if he wants to participate in a music video that's about to be filmed. He steps out of it, which is another situation where it's like, if he wants to be a part of this industry, saying no to anything that's related to that industry is not going to help. Like his best decision in that moment would be to, let me get in that music video. I'm whatever you need. You want me to be? I'll be in it. Sure. It's not producing, but at least it's like you're just spending more time around the people that are doing the thing. But he's not into it. Then Trippie Redd comes in with his nephew, and he's asking Elz to basically babysit him because Trippie Redd's about to shoot this video that Elz turned down being a part of. So now he's gotten the job as babysitter. Watch Trippie Redd's nephew and take him shopping. And once again, we're reminded that Elz is just a regular dude. He doesn't have any money. He's not like a big popular producer yet. He hasn't popped off. He's working. He's a worker bee. Doesn't have the money. But of course, Trippie Redd, being as flush with cash as he is, asks his nephew how much he wants, and the nephew almost throwing up a little Dickie sign to show how thick that stack is that his nephew, and his nephew's like 6. It's a young kid, this nephew kid. So Trippie Redd pulls out a wad of cash, gives the nephew, and he's like, what do we do, nephew? What do? Share. So the kid takes a big chunk of that stack and gives it to Elz, which would be amazing. Would be like the highlight of Elz's career to this point, to be given who knows how many thousands of dollars. Like it's a stack of hundreds, right? The kid was given a bundle of hundreds, like $10,000. I don't know. I think that's what he said. And he just gives him a stack. So I'm sure Elz got like a couple grand just for taking this kid shopping. So Trippie Redd leaves, and Elz is like, so like not knowing at all how to handle kids, asking the kid if he eats, do you eat food? Just kind of getting a baseline education of what this kid's needs are. And the kid eats food, obviously, but he's not hungry. So, cut to, they're at a street fair. And one of the few scenes, Dave is in the street fair, and Dave is talking shit to Elz. Obviously, it's something that they do to each other, talking shit. But Dave's talking shit because Elz is basically moving backwards in his career. Like, instead of growing as a producer and becoming a producer for Trippie Redd, he has become the babysitter for Trippie Redd. Where people are like stealing his beats, he's not getting credit for anything, and instead of moving forward in his career, he's basically moving backward, becoming a babysitter. And then Elz throws it back at Dave, telling him that he owns, basically, if Dave pops off, Elz owns half of whatever Dave makes because he is the producer. He's the one that made the beats for Dave. And then Dave's like, well, let's do like a producer tag. And he, pulls out his phone and does a few joke producer tags. And then he gives him the what if. Dave gives Elz the what if. Like, what would you rather happen, Elz? Would you rather lose Trippie Redd's nephew? Or would you rather lose Trippie Redd's session files? What would you rather happen? And just the thought of either of those things happening destroys Elz. It's not something that he wants to think about. It's a lose-lose situation. Both would be the end of any career that he doesn't already not have. Then they walk by this one tent. I mean, it's a street fair, so you got all these 10 by 10 tents. Everybody's selling their crafts and whatnot. It's something that I've done many times in the past, selling my artwork, setting up those tents. Something that I'll probably be doing in the future. They walk by this one tent that's selling wood shirts. And, of course, the name of this business is What Would You Wear, which is the title of this episode, and that is why wood is spelled W-O-O-D, because these are wearable wooden shirts. And, of course, the nephew of a multimillionaire is going to want a wooden shirt, because nobody has a wooden shirt. Why would they? But they're there. And the kid's all for it. So they put it on the kid. Of course, they riff about how it looks like Pinocchio. They go back and forth. The kid's all running around. Ends up falling down, which they freak out. I mean, the shirt could get damaged, but also, it's Trippie Redd's nephew. You don't want the kid getting hurt. The last thing you want to do is have to go to the hospital because Trippie Redd's kid fell down wearing a wood shirt. And then the kid gets up and asks if they have any socks, which is hilarious because that would be, as far as what would be worse than having a wood shirt would be having wood socks, which, would basically be clogs if we're being honest about it. Wooden footwear You can call it socks if you want, but it's wooden footwear, would basically be clogs, which would be something you would see and be able to purchase at most street fairs, more so than wooden shirts, to be honest. So that kid, not that far off from what could be available. Cut back to the studio. Actually, in the studio, Elz playing one of his beats that he's been working on. Actually, I don't know if he's playing the beats at this time, but Emma shows up. And she gets her vape returned to her. They're flirting. So now, like, tonally, where they left off, they're kind of, Elz wants a little bit more. Emma wants to keep it casual. She shows up. They're going back, flirting a little bit. Little bit less awkward flirting in this situation than the walk to the car earlier in the episode. No news on her laptop, which is very unlikely that she will get her laptop back, but at least she got her vape back. So while they're flirting, GaTa busts in. One of the only times we see GaTa. GaTa walks in, and of course, GaTa wants some mic time. He wants some studio time. Nobody's in recording. Nobody's doing anything. Elz is just chatting up with Emma, and GaTa wants some time. But of course, as always, shut down. No mic time for GaTa. No studio time for GaTa. So then he moves on. It's like, I'm not going to be able to get anything from Elz. Let me see if I can get something from Emma, which Emma, an artist, designer, apparently also does tattoos. So GaTa's trying to get hooked up by Emma to get some new ink, which is great. And, they're going into depth on what exactly he would want. And then GaTa, senses something. GaTa's smash sense is tingling. And immediately he knows. He's like, there's something there. You guys smashing. I can see it. Nothing's going on. You're not working on anything on your laptop. She's just in here hanging out. You guys are, there's something up between you two. GaTa instantly sees it, which GaTa, he's living in the world with a lot of clarity. He sees what's going on. And of course, Emma, because she has already been outspoken about not wanting to change the dynamic of the relationship, she wants to keep it casual. She kind of goes over a little overboard and says that she would rather die than hook up with Elz, which, again, I have been in Elz's shoes. I know that feeling. Despite the fact that Elz isn't doing himself any favors, lying about the meeting or whatever to get her out of this house early, but then also wanting more than just something casual. I know what it's like for somebody who you're flirting with to completely go the other way to try and get somebody off the scent, off the trail. And it is like such a crush to your ego. It is so heartbreaking to have like this flirty connection. And it's like they were moments ago they were flirting, and now she would rather be dead. And it hurts his feeling. Elz is an emotional. He's a sensitive guy. I relate to Elz. Good or bad, he's not perfect. He didn't do himself any favors. And it's not her fault. It's just Elz is, he's more into her than she is into him. Or at least he's in a position in his life where thinks he's ready to be in a relationship more so than she is. So after that comment, Elz is clearly, the tone is different. He is over it. He is depressed. He's like, fuck this. Like, we're flirting. Things seem to be going good. And then all of a sudden, you'd rather die than be like you. Instead of GaTa knowing that they hooked up, she goes in the complete other direction and would prefer death. And of course, Emma acting like nothing happened. Of course, GaTa left at this point. So GaTa points it out. Is not maybe getting a tattoo later, whatever. He leaves, and you have Elz pouting at his computer. Emma acting like nothing happened, right? She's going back to the flirting stuff. But Elz is already, his ego's been bruised. He's heartbroken. He's heartbroken. I know that feeling. Like, it just shuts you down. Shuts me down. And of course, it doesn't help the situation, because Emma calls him an emo bitch for being all pouty about this thing. And it's like, I know that. It's like, you don't need to be insulting. You could be caring in this moment that, like, they're both not doing each other any favors. They're not clicking. They're not, like, matching up. There's friction there. It's not working right now. Elz, even if they were in, like, something casual, still a little insulting. And then, like, to tonally, like, just drop it right away and go back to the thing is, like, sometimes it's hard. You've been insulted. You have your ego crushed. You're heartbroken. It's hard to just go back to, like, nothing happened. So, yeah, he was acting like an emotional bitch. Because he was an emotional bitch. But there's nothing wrong with being emotional. There's nothing wrong with being sensitive. It's not, like, bad. Like, so much of our culture is, like, at least my experience growing up as a sensitive, emotional bitch. Culturally, you're looked down upon. You're looked down upon. You're weak because you're emotional, because you're sensitive. You're a weakling. Not true. You're just, emotional. What are you going to do? Join Inspired Disorder Plus today. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus to join. Membership includes members-only discounts and deals. You get access to the Ray Taylor Show completely ad-free, as well as bonus episodes. You get access to the complete live painting archive. You also get access to every single podcast ever produced by Inspired Disorder, hosted by Ray Taylor. You get access to Ray Taylor's personal blog, as well as the opportunity to ask me any questions. So if you want to start a podcast, you're into art, ask me anything. And so many more things are being added every day to Inspired Disorder Plus. So sign up today, become a member, head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus and become an Inspired Disorder Plus member today. So he's like, he is blaming her, saying that she's all over the place, which, yes, she is. She went from all flirty to, ew, gross, get him away from me, and then back to flirty. So he's kind of all over. She's kind of all over the place. But he didn't start out on the right foot, lying about to get her out of the house. Oh, I got a meeting, so we got to get going. So he wasn't helping himself, kind of probably because he started off on the wrong foot. Didn't help. Like, oh, she thinks, I mean, from her perspective, he's been a little all over the place. Maybe not as much as her. Like, he didn't denounce the idea of ever being sexually attracted to her. He didn't pray for death instead of having, like, a romantic relationship or a physical relationship with somebody. So I still think she's a little bit more all over the place. So I agree on that aspect. But at the same time, he's not doing himself any favors. So cut back to, he actually leaves in that scene. But then the next scene is him back in the studio still. Emma's gone. He's working on a beat, having one of his beats playing. Trippie Redd comes in, loves the beat. He's like, oh, this is sick. And he's like, Trippie's like, obviously Trippie sees the talent that Elz has. but has the assumption that he's found success, at least some success, being that talented. And Elz once again having to remind Trippie that he's like a regular dude. He doesn't have any money. Like he drives Uber. Like that's how successful he is in the music industry, that he's driving Uber to make money. And as somebody who used to drive Uber and Lyft, let me tell you, that's not a feeling of success. Paying your bills doing that job has nothing to do with your artistic success. And Trippie gives him some great advice. Like, Elz is like, I'm not the kind of guy that, like, you know, is constantly trying to promote myself, trying to, like, shove my work down other people's throats. And Trippie's like, yeah, but on the other side, you're understepping. You're not even showing your work. Like, it's not like a binary choice of either you're shoving your work down everybody's throat or you're not. You can still be proud of your work and share your work and try to network and boost your career and try to move along this journey of that is your career. You can move along that path and introduce people to your work that might be interested. So Trippie telling him that he's understepping was, you know, it's something that for sure I would agree with about myself. There are definitely moments and times where I understep. I do have moments where I feel like I am overstepping at times. Like I you know, maybe it's a little manic depression maybe in my life. I don't know. But for sure I relate wholeheartedly to understepping. And then Trippie's nephew comes in wearing the wooden shirt, which Trippie trips out on, relating it instantaneously to 300 and Sparta, and you know, saying the line, "This is Sparta." And Elz trying to fit in, trying to be cool and go along with the riff, tries to do a Gladiator quote, "Are you not entertained?" Which doesn't go over well, falls flat, but works. I mean, it works for his character that he's like a nerdy, sensitive dude trying to go along with the riff and be funny along with the guy that he kind of looks up to and wants to work with. But it falls flat. It bombs. But at least he got that information. At least he got that, you know, that words of advice to not be so understeppy, to not be so timid, to allow yourself to get your work out there. Because once you start getting your work out there, it becomes effortless, and it's not the kind of overboard that some people do, especially in the beginning. A lot of people there, and it's successful. There's a lot of successful artists out there that don't have any experience. They just were able to hustle really good and figure things out in a way early on to gain a lot of popularity. And once they gain the popularity, it's a mad dash for them to try and understand their creative voice and to maintain a new and vibrant workflow. And that's a lot of times, you see that a lot with like one-hit wonders where they just don't sustain. They got big too early, they don't have the experience, and they die away. They don't have the fortitude to continue going for the long haul, which is something that you do gain going the other way when you're focused on growing as an artist versus promoting yourself. But cut to the gig that Elz was talking about. He's DJing a silent disco, which is a weird thing that I've never been to personally. It would be kind of fun, I guess. But it's a situation where it's like, you know, a dance area, dance party event. But everyone's wearing headphones. So you only hear the music through the headphones. So if you're not wearing headphones, it just looks like a bunch of people dancing to silence, which is kind of a funny thing. And Elz, realizing that nobody can hear him, starts talking shit. And it's a gig that he doesn't like. It's a gig he hates. There's nothing worse, in my opinion, for an artist than a paying gig that you're not creatively attached to whatsoever. Like, it's easier to be an Uber driver than it is to be like some freelance artist doing some commissioned work for somebody, or for Elz being this DJ for a silent disco. It's not like, has no bearing on his artistic career whatsoever, and he doesn't care at all about it. But he does find joy in talking shit. Emma shows up. Of course, she knew he had the gig. She wanted to come. She went out of her way to come to this gig to give him some company. And she's happy that, and also smooth things over to try and get on the same page as each other. She tells Elz that she is happy that they fucked. And he is happy that they fucked too, obviously. But she's just not ready for it to be public. She's not ready for everybody to know. She doesn't want to have to hear her roommate, Allie, have to tell her how to live her life. And Elz, of course, doesn't want to have to listen to Dave, who obviously would have all of the words and opinions about him dating Emma or going out with Emma or whatever, being in a relationship or whatever it is. So being described to Elz in that way, he agrees. And he agrees to keep it casual and keep it low, which is one thing to agree, and it's another thing for that to end up being the reality of the situation. But and in the end, they seem to have found a balance. They seem to have come to an agreement, an understanding. They are now on the same page with their sexual relationship. They're friends with benefits. And he has a gift for her. He got a stack of money. And there was that wood shirt shop. So, of course, he gets Emma a little gift because she didn't have a shirt. So the theme of the shirt, him giving her a shirt, makes sense. And, of course, it's a giant wooden shirt that she puts on. Looks like the Tin Man, but made out of wood, almost. And funny dancing. She dances with it. And he's got this idea, right? So they have fun. They're on the same page. They're having fun. He's like, you know what? We should go. You should come over to my place. We'll watch the movie Friends with Benefits. Like we are. And then, maybe we'll get naked and see what happens. And she's like, are you trying to have sex with me? And he knocks on her shirt because it's good luck. So I appreciate that. I appreciate getting to know Emma and Elz a little bit more. Seeing their, thing. We'll see how that grows over time. But I have a feeling, I don't think if I remember correctly, I don't think we see any more remnants of this in any of the other episodes. But I could be wrong. It's been a while since I've watched season 1. But either way, it was a fun episode. A little change, you're not getting the GaTa. We're not getting Dave. No Mike at all. Even the time of when this happens is kind of hard to tell. Because in the last episode, they were in Philly doing the show for Meek Mill. And now they're clearly back in L.A. So it wasn't like whatever party that they were at together. Who knows what it was? You don't really see how that happened. It's just like this weird story that's dropped in where you get to see Elz and Emma. And their little love, as well as Elz kind of growing a little bit with Trippie, understanding that he needs to be more vocal about believing in his work and putting it out there. So all in all, I love this episode. I enjoyed this episode, and those wooden shirts are ridiculous. They cannot be real. Although I wouldn't be surprised if at one point some rapper wore a wooden shirt. At least like wooden in that form where it's like very rigid. Either way. Fun episode. Dave, season 1, episode 7. What would you wear? And let's see. The next episode, episode 8, is called PIBE, P-I-B-E. I have no idea what that stands for. And it's all capitalized, P-I-B-E. So we'll see. We'll see what that's all about next week. New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. And follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.